So I'm going to stick to talking about non-ruptured aneurysms to try and answer this question. I have nothing to declare other than Andrew and I trained together, and I can tell you with confidence that the fact he's now wearing a beard relates to the international response to his nice guideline. Let's start with a question. Could you design a randomized controlled trial to tell which of these two people is best for Britain? You know you couldn't, because there are too many dimensions of difference between them. It's inherent in randomized controlled trials. To get a clear answer, you need a tight question. And the answer to that tight question is not usually very applicable to daily problems, complex daily problems. Complex daily problems need a political solution. And we should bear that in mind when we listen to what Andrew says about the data sets. Yes, he's done complex financial analysis, but most of it is based on these excellent 4 randomized controlled trials of EVAR versus open surgery, 3,000 patients. These have resulted in giving us great information about the safety and durability of EVAR. But I'd put it to you, Andrew, that that is not the base on which you can produce a national policy that reverses over 20 years of surgical development in the United Kingdom. Even if we add in your probabilistic, complex-looking financial modelling, you've still got 2 tiny bright points of light in what is a political field to make a decision of that magnitude. It's not even answered by looking at those 4 randomized controlled trials, though, because NICE goes further, and again, Andrew has sort of obfuscated, he's blown smoke at us with all this fancy statistical manipulation that goes on. This is what the paper describes. Here's the 4 RCTs. All 4 described outcome 0 to 4 years and showed no difference in outcome between EVAR and open surgery. NICE judged this to be very low quality evidence. Slightly surprisingly, 3 of the trials described 0 to 8 year no difference in outcome. But although it's the same studies, this was judged to be moderate quality evidence. 2 reported 0 to 15 year. Again, no difference between EVAR and open surgery. Yet very difficult to explain, NICE suddenly graded this as very low quality evidence. Whatever you think about the quality of evidence, I bet I could guess what everybody in this room would produce as a policy based on those 3 main points there, saying no difference in outcome between EVAR and open surgery. However, not in the world of NICE, because there, they took the 8 to 15 year data from the single study, EVAR. Andrew said it's not just that, but that's the only randomized evidence that we've got in the literature. And they judged this high-quality evidence. That means no more research needed in this area to influence their decision-making. This is weighted, so it weights their decision-making based on how they've graded it. However you cut this, however much smoke there is around it, this is what it means. The excess EVAR deaths out here, when these patients were approaching 90, has been weighted to mean more in this decision model than the excess open surgery deaths down here when people were in their early and mid-70s. You can blow anything else around it. You can describe the statistical method, but that is what has happened. 2 or 3 other points. Look at the tiny numbers of patients out here on which this crucially high-quality data has been decided. This isn't the hard point of all deaths. This is aneurysm-related death in patients not undergoing post-mortem. And then perhaps the final, but to give Andrew his due, he wasn't to know this at the time. If we look at the over data, we see that the lines cross like this, but then they cross over again back as we follow further out. A very large number of potential explanations for that and why it's different to what we see here with EVAR. A policy, Andrew, is a political decision. You might have some information on longevity and safety. You might even have some financial considerations, but certainly not all, but you've got some. But there are so much more. Have we got the staff? Have we got the beds? What about stakeholders and their desires and getting them to buy in? What about investments already sunk in the health service and the history, all that 30 years of development? You've mentioned international comparison, but we know where Britain sits right at the moment. This is what I'd say, Andrew. You've got some of the right data, but it's a wholly inappropriate interpretation that you've made on it. Thank you.